Hey everyone, Vale here, and today we're back with another video all about 10 new OP champions picks and builds for patch 11.24 in preseason 12. Now there has been a ton of changes, so there's going to be a lot of champions that are really good and a lot of champions that have fallen off a little bit. But here's a quick list of champions that you should definitely watch out for. Make sure you let us know in the comments if there's a champion you think is super strong in patch 11.24. Anyway, let's jump straight into it. First off, we're going to talk about Caitlyn. Now with everyone being so excited about Vayne and Jinx, everyone kind of forgot about Caitlyn. With her visual update last patch, she lost some of her animation cancelling combos and it really did make an impact. However, Riot have shown her the love she needs and now she's back with a vengeance. So lethal tempo got nerfed and buffed at the same time, the range has been nerfed but the attack speed for ranged champions per stack has gone up, so this actually gives Caitlyn the edge. Now she's going to go back to outranging everyone in lane without them actually still being able to do the same thing back. She now feels straight back in the position of automatic lane winner due to those oppressive long range auto attacks and abilities. The very popular Gale Force Intercollector build gives her a ton of early burst damage with a touch of mobility and actually kind of combines that lethality build into a traditional marksman setup. This build finally solves some of Caitlyn's mid game troubles and now it helps her pop off and get to that late game scaling point earlier. Honestly, late game Caitlyn feels incredibly strong right now. Her super long range and burst allow her to 1 or 2 shot carries from absolutely miles away. Next up is Ivern, and he's actually finally viable again now that Riot have fixed his Crux, so it's actually worth taking them. He can now function just like any other jungler, and honestly this champion's utility is so underrated that he's going to bounce back with a passion. What's going to make him super good though is the new Glacial Augment. Not only does it proc it with his Q and Daisy, but it scales insanely well with improved healing and shielding power, which he bases his whole build around. The state of the game at the moment has so many hyper carries and even long range scaling mages, so if you add an extra support to the equation like Ivern, it's going to be insanely hard to beat them. Ivern has always been a really difficult supportive jungler to play against, and these changes are going to make him incredibly strong, especially in those higher elos. Now we're going to talk about mages. As you already know, mages are in a super good spot at the moment, and now Riot have shifted the initial itemization, we're going to see some of the hyperscaling mages come back into the meta with a bang. Anivia, Kassadin and Cassiopeia are all going to be absolutely nuts this patch. In preseason we found that longer games are coming back often with the addition of objective bounties, and this definitely helps scaling champions thrive. Not only that though, but with so many tanks running around, the carries that can scale well have been in prime position. The new Crown into Seras build is so unbelievably cheap. It only costs 5,400 gold to have both of these items, which will provide a huge spike to these champions. Not only that, but Crown offers such an incredibly strong passive, giving these mages a lifeline and actually allowing them to overextend to farm or to fight without much risk of being punished. Plus, to top all of that off, Seraph heals you based on mana spent, which is going to be absolutely toxic when you're trying to force these champions back so you can take their turrets. Patch 11.24 is going to be full of these champions, so make sure you're ready to play against them. Top lane champions that were running lethal tempo definitely got nerfed this patch, so other champions that were already strong but overshadowed by how good lethal tempo was are definitely going to come back into the game. One of those champions is definitely Urgot. Now he's been strong for a decent amount of time, especially in those low range matchups that he can absolutely abuse with his oppressive kit. Urgot doesn't actually rely on a mythic item. You simply rush Titanic Hydra, Black Cleaver and even Hullbreaker, and you can genuinely sit in the side lanes and be impossible to take down. This split push tactic is as old and as effective as ever, and honestly, this champion is just an absolute monster. The fact that he doesn't even need a mythic item is unreal. Be sure to be prepared to play against this champion a lot in this patch, as we definitely think he's going to be up there with the big boys. Another top lane pick that's actually surprisingly good at the moment is Fiora, but not in the way that you'll think. A Challenger 1100 LP player on EU West called Potence213 has been absolutely dominating high elo with Press the Attack, Stride Breaker, Blade of the Ruin King and Hullbreaker. The burst damage and 1v2 potential this build offers is absolutely ridiculous, and when you get to the late game, you might as well make that a 1v4 or even a 1v5. Now this build path is not for the faint of heart, and also we do not recommend this if you're not super experienced on Fiora, as it requires some real practice to abuse it with its burst and your vitals. However, as this player demonstrates, in the right hand, this build is absolutely insane. The fact that Gore Drinker and Conqueror have been beaten up recently really make champions like Fiora who thrived off them a little bit out of favour. Thanks to players like this though, they've given you a way to still dominate. Now we're going to talk about just how unbelievably strong Lux is. Now I'm sure you've all been playing against this champion for the last few weeks, but holy moly is she dominating those ladders in both support and the mid lane. Lux's flexibility in her build options allow her to go for a variety of mythic choices, both offensive and defensive, and still have great success either way. The new Horizon Focus is so easy to proc, is even if she misses her Q, her E-Slow will still apply it. This basically guarantees that damage amplification permanently and makes her burst damage so hard to survive. Engaging crowd controlling supports have also taken a hit due to even Shroud getting a nerf, so Lux is simply sitting there licking her lips. Pre-season so far has either been 50-minute fiestas or absolute stomp fests, and champions with high range have really been making their mark. Soraka and Sona are also absolutely thriving in this preseason, and this patch 11.24 helps them out even further. Hyper carries are everywhere, meaning the supports who can make them even stronger and keep their laning smoother are just far more optimal. Even Shroud supports taking a hit and mages in the bot lane also call for more sustain downstairs, which has Soraka and Sona players loving their lives right now. If a Sona or Soraka is left unchecked, they can genuinely win games by their constant healing and peeling for their entire teams repeatedly. Do not underestimate just how game-winning these champions are at the moment. Especially with lots of other areas in the game being nerfed, they will only get stronger. Ziggs is another champion who's going to come back with a bang in this patch. He was super strong and frequently contested last season in the bot lane, and now that this preseason is balancing out, he will come back in full force. Scaling champions are thriving due to games lasting longer, and Ziggs' build options are now even easier. Longer range champions are more common now due to teamfights being so scary, and Archangel's staff is now cheaper and heals you when you spend mana, meaning he can spike earlier and wave clear forever. Putting Ziggs in the bot lane means you can allow your support to roam and influence the map, and when you do take bot and rotate, you can keep that mid turret alive for so long. Rift Heralds definitely seem to be super important right now that mages are back in full swing, so if you're playing against the Ziggs, this may be your best chance to counter him. The final champion we're going to mention today is yet another mage, but a slightly different one, Karthus. Now first off, it's worth mentioning that he's only really optimal in those high reloads, where players can abuse his ability to power farm and scale quicker and easier. But in the right hands, this champion is super broken, especially with the new First Strike rune. You can simply sit in lane or in the jungle and power farm as much as you want, and then all you gotta do is press your ultimate to deal a huge amount of burst across the whole map and cash in on a ton of bonus gold. This is yet another way to scale up faster and become that absolute monster that Karthus is in the late game quicker. That's going to conclude our top 10 champions picks and builds that you should definitely be playing in patch 11.24. There's plenty more choices that we didn't quite have enough room for on this list, but we wanted to include some of the more obvious ones and also some of the ones you may not have known about. Let us know in the comments who you think is going to absolutely dominate in this patch. I've been your host Vale, and as always guys, take care.